Welcome back to the #1 breakfast show, Morning at NTV. I have Dr. Deus Kamunyu. He is the chairperson, Forum for Academic Staff in Public Universities. We are going to be talking about the strike that was expedited by lecturers on account that they were not fully reimbursed with the money that was promised to them as a salary increment. The professors did get all their money. But what about the lecturers? So we are talking about the fast food-led industrial action that gears to actually achieve this objective of getting this salary increment. Away from the lecturers, we also do know that management, yes, in various public universities also plan to strike on Friday, this very week. So on top of the lecturers, you have members of different staff in management also striking as it is. So the situation is really callous. Away from the members of staff who are striking and management, we also have the students, especially from Mbarara. On Friday last week, students from Mbarara University School of Science and Technology also mounted a strike, saying, "Where are the lecturers? We've paid all our money, but we are not being told." So that was the point of contention on this side of the students. The lecturers are not in class, so the students were asking, where are they in the wake of us actually paying all the school dues that were needed from us? So a week or so after this industrial action was called, I have Dr. Deus Kamunyu to expound on what is happening now and whether or not it was the plan to have students get involved. Very good morning.
Good morning to you.
Indeed. I also hinted in my preamble on the issue of Mbarara students actually mounting a strike over the missing lecturers. Was that part of the plan?
Not really. We don't, not in my leadership.
But you do understand my question.
I don't believe
it's like Chagulanyi going onto the streets to protest, and he doesn't expect anyone to follow him on the streets. It's like Chagulanyi going onto the streets to protest and expects no one to follow him. That's what happened with you, the lecturers. You're striking, and you did not expect the students who are going to pay their tuition not to strike. So that's why we're asking, was that the plan?
Thank you. You've already said it. We are on a cause which we gave adequate notice since May last year, and there is no intention at all, because we have postponed it again and again. For the sake of negotiations and for the sake of students. And I have argued in the past, even among my own fellow colleagues, that we should never use students as ponies for our pursuits and bets.
That is honorable, very honorable.
And I have made it very clear. That's why our pronouncements are made not to disrupt semesters, but to allow for negotiation before semesters begin. And we have insisted in the past that let's negotiate, but the category, the other part of the bargain is not shifting. And yet here we are with the presidential directive and with affirmation and with concern by the president of not honoring the pro rata principle, and warning that this could result into some disharmony, which they did, and unfortunately, against our calls for against that injustice, calls against that injustice, in the middle of COVID, well aware that would result into an impasse like this one. And so we never plan to involve students, and I insist, and into the future, for those who come after me,
but you and I, Dr. Deus Kamunyu, should agree that it was inevitable for the students to get involved in this whole process, because
but it's not planned.
It's literally you working at a restaurant, and I've paid my membership. I eat lunch at your restaurant every day, but then it just so happens that on this day I've come to your restaurant and your staff are actually striking. I mean, I also have to demand for the service because I've already paid. So to me, It doesn't matter whether you or your staff are fighting or striking. I still want a service because I had paid for it in advance. And that's what is happening to the students. They paid for their tuition, but the lecturers are striking. You're calling on management and the government to increase your pay. Wasn't it inevitable for these students to get involved on that account of having paid their money?
But we never planned. But I think, like you said, you've argued, it's expected that these clients want the service that they paid for. But I insist, like you put the question, it's not planned.
Indeed.
There are some people in the past who did such, and they used students, and I am not a supporter of such policy.
That is so honorable.
And I believe we can engage and discuss, but the idea of discussion and strategic engagement is not very well understood in our context. In a way that we've come a long way, yes, compromising, but it is so much dependent on us and maybe weakening us, as opposed to an ongoing industrial relations sort of best engagement that would allow us then to take a back seat and also enjoy the process. Now it calls you to be at the forefront, and you engage in emptiness, and that then makes us a bit more uncomfortable, and it also teaches us a lesson that without maybe an agitation you cannot reach where you want to be. And I think for me, to avoid a situation where the students will also join into these struggles, the negotiating parties should do their work early enough and within the framework of industrial relations. And then also maybe staff and in our case academic staff to announce some of these actions way in advance so that they do not disrupt or invite students in the struggle. And this is what happened, because we announced the struggle in May last year. It was supposed to be effective 4th June last year. We suspended it on the 8th of October 2020 after the presidential announcement that higher education institutions would open for last years, the last years, and we said no, we have to honor this because it would be unfair. But that's after an injustice had been committed amidst COVID to a section of staff, which to me was very unreasonable.
The professors getting their money.
And we called for, don't commit this and against the presidential directive, really, don't do. But they insisted, we don't know why, up to now we've not been explained to. They said, no, but they are not willing to look, after even taking us through the injustice, they are not willing to sit
even talk
with
about
us. And then we work on our program going forward. And to us, it's really unfair to have a meeting with the president and work on a framework, and we respect the president, for heaven's sake. And then you come and you are in the middle of nowhere, and letters are being written that indicate that you probably may not be anywhere. It undermines our feelings.
Indeed, Dr. Deos Kamonyu, and you're not alone on this. The president has sent so many messengers who never actually show up to actually send that particular message to members of the public. You have so many people who are still waiting on those promises. Sometimes the money is released and it just never reaches the people, like yourself. The professors got their money, but not the lecturers. So if they're not willing to talk to you through dialogue, that means the industrial action is going to persist. Am I right, Dr. Deos Kamonyu?
Yesterday,
and if it does persist, it means more students will be actually clamoring for educational services since they had already paid.
Yeah, that's what it means. Locally at Makerere University, where I'm the chair of MWASA, we had, of course, every after letter, every after an engagement, we call for
Indeed.
the General Assembly to update them and also to get the ideas. We had the General Assembly locally at Makerere, and it was a heated General Assembly on Zoom and very well attended. And staff insisted that we cannot be taken for, and by the way, more importantly, the fact that also we are being threatened, we are being forced to go to class, by, head counting and all that, and against the law, of course, Employment Act. And this further dramatizes us, because, we provide this service, and I can't imagine a teacher on a rope being forced to teach.
Indeed.
It's
You won't do your best. You won't do your best. That's
I can't imagine. And that should also be a call on us to really sit and negotiate, as opposed to further dramatization.
No one can work under duress.
Of staff.
So-
And this is where, from yesterday's meeting, I call upon government and all stakeholders to be automatically invited into this course, and we end it, and we, just like the president had directed.
And the viewer who is watching would like to know, Dr. Deus Kamunyu, can the management delete your names from the payroll or fire the striking workers in this regard if you refuse to go back to work?
In a state of lawlessness, yes, and we have seen an
Which we
increasing
are not
state
in.
of lawlessness. Especially Makerere University, there's been quite of high-handedness and lawlessness, which is increasing.
You're telling me there's been a state of high-handedness and lawlessness at the highest educational institution in this country?
Looking at the cases that have been adjudicated on, and the nature, including myself, where I was called or everything. I committed every crime on the face of the earth, and I was suspended. And then, of course, I was cleared. I feel defamed, but leadership sometimes is about commitment. But there has been some level, and we have quite a number of legal bills out there. So yes, in the state of high-handedness, one could do that. But lawfully, if you are to be lawful, we are entitled to be on an industrial action. And I think the other party, instead of committing a felony, we should sit and talk, and then end this and go forward.
Why are you so optimistic that this FASPO-led industrial action shall actually bear the fruit that you highly seek for?
I'm optimistic because, one, I'm its leader in a way that I know I am always full of optimism, that where a need for talking and leadership, we can provide. I can provide that. But also, on the other hand, I believe that this is a cause that everyone knows, has been known, and that it requires us to move towards the end, towards the exit. And so, for me, it's a matter of negotiating it out of the way in the framework of presidential directive. And then and of course, I don't lead myself. I lead the people. Let me assure you, if they all sat today and demanded that this strike end, I would not even come here.
Indeed, I think that should be our point of conversation,
yes.
trying to woo these lecturers to come back to class on the account that parents have been grappling with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2020 was so disastrous on the parents. I could see it in the neighborhoods when I was moving out there. Parents have had to sell their girls into prostitution. Dr. Deus Kamunyu, don't you have breasts? Go out there and make money. That's how bad the situation is. Now school has reopened. You've actually gotten some little money. You want to send your child back to school. Now the lecturers are also striking. Shouldn't you go back to classes? This is a recommendation that was coming in from the educationists. They were saying maybe the lecturers should go back to the classes as they expedite this dialogue process with the management and the government. But the parents should not lose out because they've lost everything to the pandemic.
Of course, we are also parents, and staff have said that. Most of our staff are parents, and it's important that really these students go back to class. But I also feel that there is an opportunity for us to talk and exit on a win-win situation, because you see, if really anyone anticipated a bad end on the account that an injustice was committed in the middle of the pandemic against the majority of the staff, for example, 2,700 staff out of 3,100 were left out. If they had listened, and to me, what does that mean? I'm not going backwards. I'm saying an injustice was committed. And I don't know why we cannot sit and talk on how then we can resolve this conflict, considering that we were also not listened to in a way that, that we had come peacefully, moving pro rata, and with the guidance of the president. And then certain people all of a sudden created, in the middle of the pandemic, well knowing that a crisis would come. So it means someone intentionally throws us into this state of affairs. And it's unacceptable for a peaceful community to engage that way. That we cry, that we say, please don't commit this, it's going to cause a problem. And here I am, as a leader, being pushed to negotiate on that injustice, and the party is not willing to come into terms with the injustice they committed and the fact that we need progress and a roadmap. And that's what is absent. But once that is done, and oftentimes the public out there looks at us as the unfair lot, but they never look at themselves.
You're not the unfair
because
lot.
we are part of the stakeholders.
You're not the unfair lot because you've been the bigger person in this whole process. You've postponed this industrial action more than twice, more than thrice. Yes, you've been the bigger person. But according to the educationists I've been talking to, they were like, you should continue being the bigger persons, the lecturers. Go back to class, teach these students as you actually expedite a dialogue process with these individuals so that you can strike a balance. But then the students and the parents should not lose out, because this is already a staggered reopening.
And I understand them, and we've taken it back to staff again and again, and it's them to reason it out, and we guide, and in the relationship of three, parents, students, and us, we all have something to lose. I will have to take on extra time to teach these young people, and it's unfortunate.
And
but
also
I am calling on the party with which we negotiate, and especially our local leaders and government, really, when such comes about, and well aware that you committed an injustice in the middle of the pandemic against our pleading, then it's actually adequate for you, it's adequate reason for you to come on the table, and we work on an exit strategy. And then staff go back to teach. And to me, this is what it has to be. But
you talk about a small cabal. You talk about a small cabal of individuals that have been frustrating your efforts. Who are they? The president is watching. He would like to know who are these individuals.
We do not know them, because what we know is that we have a presidential directive at the highest office in the land guiding, and then we have the contrary being done. That's what we know for a fact. And so we don't know who does that. And whoever does it is the one who dramatizes us. And I think he or she is unreasonable and responsible for these unfair agitations. Especially, by the way, we were not at that time, we were not looking for more money. We were very reasonable. We had accepted 50 billion, well aware that we were in the middle of the pandemic. Remember, the president had promised 179 billion. And so we told government, look, we are okay with 50 billion because we know. But do it as the president had directed. And the first payroll actually came out with that kind of indication. But then all of a sudden it changed. And so look here, we have a president's directive. We have Minister of Public Service honoring the president's directive. And then all of a sudden we have a change, which up to date is unexplainable. And so why we say these are, we don't know who they are, but they are the people who actually keep dramatizing us. And I think they shouldn't do that, because they first of all, they present the president as if he's not serious to us. And we don't want to ever think that way, not for me, for sure. But in the circumstances, I think there are people who probably should be blamed for whatever happens. And those people, government has capacity to find them. And whatever happens, the student strike, etc., that come along way in this whole dramatized situation. But we have hope. We can sit and talk and work on a roadmap. I don't see why that can't happen. In the circumstances, having also, you know, ignored us last year and having postponed, and there's no meaningful negotiation, we can still sit and quickly reach a compromise and then move forward, and without undermining these young people and of course undermining the parents.
How destabilizing will this industrial action be on the whole education system as far as higher education is concerned? Because you have a slew of first-year students who are showing up, they've not gone through orientation and so forth. How destabilizing will this industrial action be on the education phased staggering manner?
I don't know. I have heard from vice chancellors saying that teaching is going on, that it's just a group of unserious people. Of course, they point at me, who are not teaching. And so I imagine to them, and this is where I find it very interesting, the vice chancellors have said that teaching is going on. So according to them, there is no instability. And so it's not on our code to now start prescribing the extent to which we would dramatize when the leaders of these institutions, the managers, are saying teaching is going on and everything is stable. Have you heard that? Yes. And so I believe if negotiations on my side, if negotiations took place very fast, destabilization would be minimal. But if the leaders, the managers continue to say that we are working, and then at the same time we are being asked questions on why we're on strike, it becomes very
But it looks like you're headed for double jeopardy. What do I mean by double jeopardy? Not getting the increment that you've been looking for that has led to this industrial action, and also getting fired and deleted from the payroll. Aren't you worried this might happen, and what would be your next course of action?
I think I never think doomsday. As a person, deep in, I've never been a believer of doomsday. That putting me off the payroll is not what I'm thinking.
Those
about.
are the threats they are making.
I'm thinking about a solution. But like I said, in a state of lawlessness, for which we are ready sometimes, you cannot discount the fact that you could be affected. But as a citizen and as a law-abiding citizen, I believe that the situation we are facing now is not out of the law, and that the only requirement is that we sit and talk. And so if man or women out there, astute women and men who lead our institutions, who lead our government, think that the only option is to strike Kamunyu and put him on the payroll, is of course much smaller than, but I hope then that will end strikes forever. But if in a lawful way, I think that would not be something in my sight, because then to me it means now someone wants to lawlessly tackle me and also dramatize my citizenship. Yes.
And also some sections of educationists have also come up with a recommendation that seems to indicate that some lecturers or the lecturers should resign if they don't get what they want. Is that a recommendation you would look at?
I think one would say that if they, for example, didn't have the right cause, that probably someone feels they should buy that university or buy the offices they occupy, and maybe government is saying, no, we are not selling, so then get out. This is a situation that is based on a promise, which promise was defaulted on, and
so you cannot resign
creating
based
an
on
injustice,
a promise.
an injustice which was committed. We are not on, by the way, we're not on this industrial action because at that time we wanted all the money.
Yes.
We are on this industrial action because an injustice was committed and gaps were created that are going to undermine our promotions, that have created some kind of toxic working environment where staff will be saying, okay, I cannot take on that load because you are, you know, that kind of situation. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. And so it can't possibly be the end game that staff would then say, okay, we resign to our fate and we go. And I think that's not the mission of government. The whole intention of enhancement and the presidential directive was to keep this crop of people here, young people, very vibrant, promising academics, support them, and they get involved in the transformation of their country.
Deus Kamunyu, he is the chairperson, Forum for Academic Staff in Public Universities. Many thanks for having made the time to speak to us right here in Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Pray for us.
Indeed, we are.
Yeah.
You're still watching Morning